Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see you at SANO seminar. Today we have as a speaker our colleague Agus Hartojo, who is a postdoc in computer vision team at SANO Center for Computational Medicine. And Agus is working on new mathematical and machine learning methods which are suitable for analyzing health data, especially time series. And he would like to help in, for example, in disease detection using neural and EEG data sets, for example. So, you will hear about his research now. Agus, screen is yours. Please go on.
Okay, thank you, Marian, for giving me the opportunity to present. Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending my presentation today. I am Agus Hartojo, and today I'm going to present our work on data reconstruction from machine learning models via inverse estimation and Bayesian inference. This research was conducted in collaboration with Dominika Ciupak, Maciej Malawski, and Alessandro Crimi. Here is an overview of the key points we'll cover today. First, we will explore what data reconstruction from machine learning models is. Here, we will establish a foundational understanding of this novel concept, I would say. And then the second key point is that we will address why data reconstruction from machine learning models is relevant or even important. Here, I will highlight its potential use cases or scenarios. Then we'll look at how data reconstruction is achieved, which will provide a high-level view of the methods involved in this framework. Afterwards, I'll present the theoretical framework. Here, we will see the theoretical framework that underpins our data reconstruction approach. And then we will discuss the empirical validation of this theoretical prediction, where we will show how our methods perform on various data sets using various machine learning algorithms. And then I'll conclude my presentation with some key takeaways. I will also share a brief overview of other works I've been involved in at SANO, apart from this one, to give a sense of broader scope of my research. Let's start with the first question. What exactly is data reconstruction from machine learning models? Yeah, in machine learning, we often start with a data set and a trained model. For instance, here we have data with feature like the number of major vessels and maximum heart rate achieved. And then model that is designed to classify, let's say, heart disease status. In this context, we input data into model, and it provides prediction of the class level here. Yeah, such as this positive or negative label. of heart disease diagnosis, for instance. This kind of task where we begin with data and model to arrive with class prediction is what we usually do in machine learning. And this is known as, let's say the forward problem. However, in our work, we are going in the opposite direction here. We begin with train model and target class with this label such as positive or negative, diagnosis of a disease. And we aim to reconstruct the original data that would produce this classification. And because we start with the class label, the resulting recovered data inherently contains information about which subset belongs to which class. And then we call this problem an inference problem, let's say, in machine learning. And then the process to infer the reconstructed data is called the inverse estimation. So that's basically what data reconstruction from machine learning models is. Next, let's discuss the motivation behind this work. Why is data reconstruction from machine learning models is relevant or even important? Yeah, it's essential to understand why we would want to recover data from machine learning model. Here we start with a trained machine learning model. Yeah, maybe that one that designed to classify data into positive or negative labels. And then in certain environment like federated learning, we know that data isn't stored centrally. Instead, models are trained across the distributed devices or location. Yeah, meaning that we often only have access to the model and its classification labels without the original data. Another example of environment with similar condition is transfer learning, where a model is adapted for a new task or data set, but the original data isn't available. So these are example of environments where we have the model and labels, but not the data itself. So in the sense, data reconstruction is especially valuable. Yeah, and then with inverse estimation, we can recreate or recover the data set. Yeah, with also with the corresponding labels. And then actually this process enables us to perform model introspection, let's say. This will allow us to understand how the model makes decision and to like uncover the underlying pattern. This also support error analysis, which will help us identify areas where the model might be misclassifying data. Yeah, this can also be crucial for improving model reliability. And then it also facilitates synthetic data generation, where we can generate new realistic data samples based on the model. And then using this reconstructed data with the class label, of course, we can fit it back into machine learning pipeline. We call it learning. To train new model, something like that. And then, we can call this model as synthetic model. Yeah, because, it's trained on synthetic data. In fact, we will see later that these synthetic models closely replicate the performance of the original models that we will see later. Yeah, in the next section. So with all of this motivation, we can highlight the potential applications and benefits of data reconstruction from machine learning models. Okay, now that we have seen the motivation behind data reconstruction, let's explore how this process is actually achieved. So in this part, we will discuss the methods and techniques we use to reconstruct data from machine learning models. So to reconstruct data from a model, we rely on Bayesian inference framework. And now let's break down its component here. Yeah, this Bayesian inference or Bayesian theorem will allow us to infer posterior distribution here. This posterior distribution is essentially the distribution we want to infer, because yeah, it represents the recovered data of interest. And then to start the inference using Bayesian theorem, we have to assume prior distribution, which we set here as a uniform distribution. This prior distribution represent our initial unbiased belief about the data. Yeah, in this case, we assume that all values within a certain range are equally likely. Next, we have the likelihood function, which in our setup is provided by the model's predict-proba method. This function gives us the probability distribution over class levels based on the model's learned parameters. And finally, there is this model evidence, which in this case is represented by the class proportion in the dataset. For example, in the case of balanced binary classification problem, the evidence would be 0.5 for each class. So together, all of these components allow us to infer the posterior distribution. Yeah, this posterior distribution which represent the recovered data of interest. It's interesting to mention that in our research setup, we have unique advantage, which is access to both true priors and true posteriors. The setup is truly unique in the context of Bayesian inference. From all the references we reviewed, we found no studies that use Bayesian inference with the concept of true priors and true posteriors. So typically, studies have only assumed priors and estimated posteriors. And here we have true priors and true posteriors. And this distinction allows us to comprehensively evaluate the accuracy of our reconstructed data by comparing it directly to these known distributions. But yeah, of course, it's important to note that while we have access to true priors and true posteriors in our research setup, this would not be available in the practical application setup, where the original data is not accessible in the first place. So this figure here illustrates the marginal true prior and marginal true posterior distribution. Yeah, the blue one is the marginal true prior, and then the orange and the green one are representing the marginal true posteriors for different levels or for each level. And yeah, for each parameter here, the marginal true posterior, true prior, sorry, is calculated as the empirical distribution across the entire data set. Yeah, which will provide an overall view of how the feature behaves across all cases. The marginal to posterior, on the other hand, is derived by isolating the subset of data corresponding to specific class and calculating its parameters distribution within this subset. So that's how we calculate the true priors and true posterior, which is or which are inherently available or accessible in the dataset. So with this research setup with true priors and true posteriors, we have the luxury to be able to evaluate both the assumed priors and the estimated posteriors. And this evaluation will help us will help us understand how closely our assumption align with the true distribution and assess the overall fidelity of our approach. Continuing with our unique setup, this figure shows a juxtaposition of the marginal assumed prior. This red one, uniform distribution one, and the marginal true priors, the blue one, for selected parameters. Yeah, it is so, and then we can see here that we can quantify the difference. Yeah, we can evaluate. Yeah, it means we can evaluate or we can quantify the difference between the assumed prior, this red one, and the true priors using Kullback-Leibler divergence here. We can see the values attached on its subplots here. So it means that we can access or we can assess how well or how poorly our assumed priors align with the actual data distribution or the true priors. And this ability to compare true and assumed prior is highly unique in Bayesian inference. So as I said before, typically other studies only have the notion of assumed priors and estimated posteriors. But now we have true priors and true posterior, and of course also assumed priors and estimated posteriors. So this possibility to evaluate the priors, again, the true priors, and yeah, also between estimated posterior with the true posterior is truly very beneficial and a very distinctive feature of our approach here. Moving on, to approximate the posterior distribution, we use MCMC sampling here. The goal is to generate samples from the posterior distribution, condition on a given class level, using only the model and target class. So in this MCMC setup, we start with initial random sample. We propose candidate sample here, and then through random walk in a constant space, and then its candidate sample will be evaluated for acceptance or rejection. Based on the likelihood ratio between this current sample and the previous sample. If the candidate sample meets the acceptance criteria, it is added to the set of accepted samples. This S here. Otherwise, then it is not yet added. And this process continues until we reach our target, which is 5,000 samples here. So we believe with these 5,000 samples, we can form an estimated posterior distribution, which can representative to represent our reconstructed data for the chosen class. So that's the technical aspect of the data reconstruction from machine learning models. And here we present the result of our data reconstruction process. shown as inverted posterior distribution. And this effectively represent the recovered data we are interested in. And then in its subplot, we can compare between the estimated posterior with the true posteriors using KLD. And of course, lower KLD indicates closer alignment between the estimated and true posterior. And this KLD values give us insight into the fidelity or the correctness, or the accuracy of the reconstructed data. So with this evaluation against the true posteriors, we can assess how effectively our approach can recover data from solely on the model and the class level alone. And then this figure demonstrates how well our synthetic models replicate the performance of the original models. So in subplot, the left subplot, we see a comparison of the training accuracy between the base model and the synthetic model. And then this red dashed line represent perfect agreement. And as you can see, the data points cluster for the all the data points are very close to this diagonal line. This indicates that the synthetic models closely match the training performance of the base model. And then the same way we did for the second plot here or subplot here. In the right subplot, we examine the test accuracy of the base and synthetic models when they are both evaluated on the same original test set. And here we can see again that data points align or very close to the around the red line, which means there is strong agreement between these two models, between the base model and the synthetic models. Even when we see more closely, there are more data points above the line, which suggests that in some cases the synthetic models even slightly outperforms the base models on that set. And then we also provide this Pearson correlation coefficient here. And we can see that from this value of correlation, we can it confirms that there is strong alignment between the performance between the base and synthetic models. So that's one of the advantage of or good performance of this approach, that the synthetic models can replicate the original models in terms of performing classification on even new data. Okay, moving on. We've covered the motivation and then the methods and the result of our data reconstruction process. Now, let's turn to the theoretical framework. So in this part, we will explore the theoretical correlation that underpin our approach. Let's begin with our analytical approach. So actually, it is based on a very simple proposition. We establish that the dependent variables are considered to be correlated when their partial derivatives with respect to the independent variable are either both positive or both negative. To illustrate this, let's consider a well-known fact. For instance, it's just for example, the relationship between the area and circumference of a circle. From observation, we can see that these two quantities are tightly correlated When one increases, the other also increases, and when one decreases, the other also decreases. But how can we prove this correlation theoretically? That's where our simple proposition comes in. We know the formulas for the area and the circumference of a circle. Here, yeah, we can see here the formula for both quantities. And now let's compute the derivative of these two quantities with respect to the radius. This do A, do R, and do C, do R. And yeah, we find that both derivatives are strictly positive across all possible parameter values in the context. And that's why, yeah, we established that the area and the circumference of a circle are correlated or theoretically correlated. And that's how we deduce this theoretical correlation between the area and the circumference of the circle. So that's only example to make it clearer about our analytical approach. Now returning to our data reconstruction context, the fidelity of the recovered data, yeah, is our primary focus. Yeah, specifically, we are interested in the factors that influence the KLD between the true and estimated posteriors here. We call it, let's say, let's call it posterior KLD. And we hypothesize that two main factors could impact this posterior KLD. The first is the prior KLD, which is the KLD between the true and assumed priors. And then the second factors is the model's prediction error, which is represented by false positive and false negative rate here. In this investigation, we aim to determine whether the accuracy of the assumed prior is reflected in the accuracy of data recovery. Yeah, that's the first thing we are interested in investigating. And then the second thing is we want to examine if the model classification error affect the fidelity of the recovered data. So that's our investigative focus and hypothesis. Let's begin with our first investigation, determining if the accuracy of the prior will be reflected in the accuracy of the posterior KLD here, or the accuracy of data recovery here. To explore this, we start by calculating two key quantities. Here we have prior KLD and here posterior KLD. Now let's examine the derivative of both KLD measures with respect to a dependent variable. In this case, the standard deviation of the marginal true prior. We choose this independent variable because it can serve as a proxy for the diversity and variability within our data set. So yeah, it is the derivative for the first quantity and the second derivative. And then we can see here that both derivative are negative across all possible values of the involved variable here. And this result leads to corollary 1, which confirm a theoretical correlation. Decreasing data recovery deviation is associated with smaller prior discrepancy, as stated in this title here. So that's for the first investigation. Let's move on. Let's move on to our second investigation. We are interested in determining if the model classification error here will be reflected in the fidelity of the recovered data here. So the same way, we start by calculating two key quantities. So here we have the quantity for the generated error, and here the posterior KLD. And then let's examine the derivative of these both quantities, with respect to the another independent variable. In this case, this independent variable is discrepancy between the accurate and inaccurate likelihoods. So we have the first derivative and then the second, the derivative for the second quantity. And again, we can see here, that both derivatives are positive across all possible values of the involved variable here. And this result lead us to corollary 2, which confirms theoretical correlation. Increasing data recovery deviation is associated with higher model prediction error, as stated in the title here. So we already perform two investigation for two theoretical correlation here. Okay, just let's summarize the main finding of our theoretical framework with these two key corollaries, corollary 1 and corollary 2. These two corollaries represent the central insight of our analysis. What do they tell us about our theoretical correlation? The first corollary established that more accurate assumed prior is positively correlated with improved data recovery outcomes. In other words, the closer our assumed prior is to the true distribution, the more accurate our recovered data becomes. And then the second corollary reveals that the accuracy of the model prediction is positively correlated with the fidelity of the recovered posterior distribution. This means that model with lower prediction errors will result in more reliable data reconstruction. So this corollaries capture the essence of our theoretical result, in the context of data reconstruction from machine learning models. So after our theoretical prediction are established, now we turn to the empirical validation of these findings. So in this part, we'll examine the experimental results that support and confirm the key correlation that we have identified in the theoretical framework. So this figure presents experimental evidence that support corollaries 1 and 2 we discussed before. In the first plot, we see a correlation between the KLD of the marginal true priors and assumed priors. And this first subplot aligned with corollary 1. It means that this strong correlation between prior KLD and posterior KLD shows that more accurate assumed prior or lower prior KLD is associated with better data recovery outcomes. which is stated by the Colorali one. And then in the second subplot here, we observe the relationship between the accuracy of the machine learning model and the posterior KLD. And this result, this strong correlation between these data points actually support corollary too, which means that we can see support in the sense that higher model accuracy correspond to more faithful or more accurate data reconstruction. And then we can see also the correlation coefficient here, which is high, which indicate the strong correlation between these different variables that that indicates how the the accuracy of the recovered data are associated with these two quantities that we already indicated in the coloralis. And then this table provides us a summary of our experimental result across various data sets and machine learning algorithms, different machine learning algorithms. And the results here also support the theoretical finding, stated by corollaries 1 and 2. So for each data set, we tested with multiple machine learning model, including deep neural network, gradient boosting classifiers, SVM, and more. And then we can see here across different data set and algorithm, we can observe consistently strong correlation. And then we have a set of box plot here. They illustrate the distribution of the correlation coefficient across different data sets and machine learning algorithm for our key metrics we discussed before in our inference estimation context. As shown here, the median correlation coefficient for each metric exceed 0.7. Which means that they demonstrate consistently strong relationship that support our theoretical prediction. So this box plot actually provides us visual confirmation of the robustness of our empirical validation. Okay, let's conclude our discussion today. First, our experimental findings strongly validate the theoretical basis of our approach. They show that the fidelity of the recovered data is primarily governed by two main factors. The accuracy of the assumed prior, and second, the predictive accuracy of the machine learning model. And then second conclusion is that the correlation we observe and that agree upon between the theoretical and the experimental or empirical methods actually provide actionable insights. So it's not only theoretical result, but actually there are some actionable insight from what we have investigated in this work. Specifically, it's important to continuously validate, and refine the assumed priors to align them more closely with the true distribution. So even when the original data is unavailable, we can incorporate any existing knowledge or information about prior distribution. For example, we might rely on noun distribution for demographic variables such as age or income, which often follow standard patterns. Or maybe we can use noun distribution for physiological measures like blood pressure or height. So by using this prior knowledge, we can enhance the accuracy of assumed prior, and in turn, it will also enhance the accuracy of data reconstruction. And then the second insight is, understanding the model's prediction accuracy can serve as a useful indicator of the reliability of the reconstructed data. For example, if we know the model's accuracy is high, let's say around 90%, we can be more confident in the fidelity of the reconstructed data. However, if the model's accuracy is low, let's say around 60%, we might have less confidence in the reconstructed data's reliability. So this predictive accuracy can serve as a valuable benchmark for assessing how closely the reconstructed data align with the original distribution. And then the final conclusion is, we found strong correlation between the accuracies of the synthetic and base model, along with comparable absolute performance level. Actually, they suggest that our method, our inverse estimation method, our reconstruction method, effectively preserve key data characteristic. That's why when we develop a synthetic model based on the synthetic data we recovered, the model can replicate the performance of the base model, which is amazing in my opinion. So those are the conclusion for our works, with in data reconstruction from machine learning models. And then maybe just brief overview of other works I've been involved in at Sano. Another work that I've been involved in is this project on early detection of dementia using machine learning. So I'm assisting Rosemary in developing machine learning pipeline that is trained on the dementia data that Rosemary has collected at Dom Seniora. And the model Rosemary and I have developed is highly accurate and highly interpretable. And we are planning to submit a paper for this by the end of this year. And then the next work, actually it's my previous work, synergistic eigenanalysis of covariance and Hessian matrices. It is the work that where I develop where I combine the synergistic power or synergistic advantage of both both covariance and Hessian eigenanalysis. And then with this method, this method actually outperform the state-of-the-art methods in the area of data projection and dimensional reduction. And then another work I am just starting is about this effect of window and step sizes on classification accuracy in spike train time series classification. So in this work, I hypothesize based on like theoretical prediction, using binomial distribution. And based on my initial observation, the theoretical finding and empirical finding seems like agreeing to each other. So let's see the next the next experiment and the next work on this research. And I also plan to submit the paper about this by the end of this year. Okay, thank you for your attention. Any question?
Thank you very much for your talk. We have time for questions, for comments, suggestions. Well, could you please come back to the slide with conclusions? Well, I do not precisely understand the third conclusion about preserves key data characteristics, because you have information that strong correlation between accuracy of synthesis and Bayes model. So probably not all key data characteristics are demonstrated. I have impression that it's only these data characteristics which are related somehow for correlations between data. What precisely do you mean by key data characteristics?
Yeah, actually, there is no formal base for this, but we just observe this result here. Sorry, wait a minute. No, it's another. Yeah, because when we train this synthetic data based on the synthetic, synthetic model based on synthetic data, we vary the accuracy of the Bayes model. Actually, the synthetic model can follow this different accuracy as shown by this correlation here, strong correlation here. So we just conclude, or we just what we call it, we just conclude that the reason why it happened is because our recovered data is good enough, which means that this data can maintain or retain this key characteristic of the original data. Otherwise, if the data is not good enough, then when we train machine learning model on this data, it won't result in a model that replicate the original data. So it means that there are some key factors that are retained on this synthetic data that we recovered using our inverse estimation method. I hope I explained myself clearly.
Well, it's maybe a bit closer to. I feel that it is not precisely, it is not there are no formal proof that it is, but it's just observation. Yes,
Just speculation. Yeah. We just speculate that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. For this part, we just speculate. Yeah. So for other,
Okay.
yeah.
So it means that that in such a way you can somehow reduce amount of data which are analyzed. Yes.
But
May I judge that in such a way you can somehow, well, if we have a sometimes the real problem is that we have too much data. Yes, so the volumes of data very large, so we can just try to take in order to understand what is behind of this data, we can take a kind of a sample, and having this sample, we can have some, let's say, idea about what the whole set of data will mean in this case. Yes.
Thank you for the question, but I'm not sure I understand the question, but I'll try to answer. I would say that it's likely it will be the other way around. Actually, with this with our approach, we can even generate new data. Like if you want to have more data, then our method can be used. Like if our data is small, and then our method can be used as like oversampling method, like to generate more synthetic data. Because in our work now, for instance, we usually work on data with small number of records, maybe 300 or 400, something like that. But then in our method, this our data reconstruction method, we generate 5,000. So we just fix this number, but for its instant of data reconstruction, we generate 5,000, exactly 5,000 samples that replicate the distribution of the original data, which only contain, let's say, 300. So even we can generate more data instead of less data. I hope I explained myself clearly. And but clearly we in what we have done here, we generate even more data with this 5,000 data and new data. Yeah, without the scenario is we don't know or we don't have access to the original data. So we are blind of the original data, but then we can generate this 5,000 new data instances.
Okay. Well, let's look at other people who at the seminar. Are there any other questions and comments? Well, I don't see more people who would like to comment on your research. So it seems that we will close our seminar at that moment. So thank you very much for your talk.
Thank you.
And yes, and well, I would like to inform all of you that next Monday is 11th of November, and it is a national holiday in Poland. And for this reason, we will have no seminar, of course. However, in 2 weeks from now, on 18th of November, there will be a regular seminar and Enrico Del Ara will give a talk, and you will be informed in advance about the topic and also the bio of a speaker. So thank you very much for participation in the talk.
Thank you.
And thank you, Agus, for your talk.
Welcome,
Many
Marian.
thanks for everybody being present here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.